Welcome back to our podcast, Regulation Matters, a Clear Conversation. Once again, I'm your host, Line Dempsey. I'm currently the Chief Compliance Officer with Rickman Associates Family Dentistry with practices in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. I've also been a board member and past president of CLEAR. As many of you are aware, the Council on Licensure Enforcement and Regulation, or CLEAR, is an association of individuals, agencies, and organizations that comprise the international community of professional and occupational regulation. This podcast is an opportunity for you to hear about important topics in our regulatory community. Now, today, we're continuing CLEAR's Telling Our Stories series. As we get ready to come together for the annual education conference, we're excited to share more stories of the connections and learnings that CLEAR participants value and benefit from. I'm glad to have joining me today CLEAR board members Mark Steinagel, Jessica Kallipolites, and Shilo Tooze to talk about their CLEAR experience. And as we gear up for the annual education conference, I've been thinking about how many people's CLEAR journey starts at the actual conference, whether it's their first session or a coffee break conversation that sparks something deeper. So Mark, Jessica, and Shilo, thinking back to your own experience, what was your entry point into CLEAR? And I'd love to hear how those first steps that led to deeper involvement, committee work, and ultimately their board service. So let's start with you first, Mark.
You bet. So the first conference I attended was in 2009 in Denver, Colorado. I had just been appointed to my position as division director for the Division of Professional Licensing in Utah, which is an umbrella agency. And I not only attended the annual meeting, but I also came 3 days early and attended the executive leadership training seminar. And so I had 6 days of CLEAR, Monday through Saturday in Denver in 2009. And what I loved the extra training. I loved the sessions. It was my first kind of introduction to CLEAR because I'd only been in my position about 2 months. One of the things I loved about CLEAR compared to the other organizations we belong to as an umbrella agency, we regulate professions in more than 60 industries. And so we pay dues to probably 70 different national groups. And I think most of them are very strong groups, but they focus on a specific profession. And one of the things I learned in that first conference that I really enjoyed was that we had multiple viewpoints and multiple tracks at the annual conference as compared to a lot of these other groups. So those are a few things I picked up on my kind of introduction to CLEAR that I thought really highlighted to me the value of CLEAR.
Well, thank you for that, Mark. And how about you, Jessica?
Sure, thank you. So I started with CLEAR. My first conference was 2022, I believe. It was in Louisville. And at that point, I had just over a year under my belt as the Enforcement Division Director at the New Hampshire Office of Professional Licensure and Certification. That was quite the first year. But I was asked to go to this conference for CLEAR, which at the time I didn't know what it was. And I went, and, having my prior sort of career was in bar admissions, and we conferenced quite often. So what I was really hoping for was that I would find sort of that supportive collegial atmosphere that I had experienced there. And that's exactly what I found at CLEAR. Everybody was very supportive and everyone was very welcoming, and you could meet people. We are also an umbrella agency. You could meet other people who worked for umbrella agencies. You could meet people who were, regulated a single profession. You can get input from people with all different sort of perspectives. But I found it very welcoming, and I got very excited about, being part of this organization. So I joined, I think, all the committees and just tried to really get involved because I wanted to, I have this theory that, sort of what you get out of things depends on what you are willing to put into it. So I decided to just go completely 100% and throw myself into it, which also included running for the board the next year, which I was a very new member of CLEAR, but I was very grateful and humbled to actually be elected as a relatively new member of CLEAR. So that's what brought me to CLEAR.
And what about you, Shilo?
Thank you. I've been lucky enough to have the organizations that I've worked at be really involved in CLEAR. And I think my first CLEAR conference was actually really early in my career when CLEAR hosted a conference in Toronto. And I couldn't tell you what year it was, but a long time ago. Um, and I was really excited to hear that there were other people that wanted to talk about regulation when there were so many people who asked what you did and didn't understand when you tried to answer the question. Um, and as I progressed in my career, I got the opportunities to attend CLEAR conferences more regularly. And it actually became a performance goal that I needed to join some committees. And so I started to do that. And like Jessica, I did not just join one, I want to say 3 or 4 committees, I think, and really enjoyed um, how much you could learn from others, that there were other people talking about the same things that we were thinking about, and found that really reassuring that we were on the right track, and so many things that we could take back to our work that we were doing, that we'd learned from others. So that was fantastic. And then the further I immersed into committees, somebody encouraged me to run for the board. And I didn't do it the first year. I thought, oh no, I've got too much going on. I need to think about this. And then I finally did last year. And as Jessica said, very humbled to have been elected to the board and so excited just to continue to contribute to the organization.
It's always interesting to hear different people's stories on how they came to Clear, and it seems that one of the common themes here is networking and the sharing of knowledge and expertise. Clear's tagline is promoting regulatory excellence. I know you guys are very aware of that, but for each of us, that probably means something a little different. So, what personal or professional shifts have you noticed through your involvement with Clear and the shared goal of promoting this regulatory excellence? Jessica, maybe if we could start with you on that one.
Sure. One thing that I've noticed is sort of this transition, if you will, from, and this might be more personal, I'm not certain, but it seems like there's more openness to understanding that, regulation involves human beings and individuals. The first time I heard the phrase compassion and regulation, I mean, I'm going to be honest, my thought was, are you kidding? What is that? But it's true. It's such an important thing. And I am so very I'm happy to have been a part of sort of trying to bring that to New Hampshire at my position with OPLC, and then my current position, I'm with the New Hampshire Banking Department currently. But I feel like there has been this transition, at least that I've seen in my work with bar admissions, OPLC, especially, that it's not about perfection. I think sometimes we get sort of caught up in being perfect and protecting the public and forgetting that the licensees are also human beings, and none of us are perfect. So it's very, clearly we have to protect the public. That's what we're here to do. But we're also dealing with in enforcement in cases that have to do with individual licensees who are human beings. And sometimes circumstances happen, or there's a reason that they make a bad decision. So all of that has to be balanced. So I think the greatest sort of change that I've seen has to do with the transition from being very rigid and expecting people to be perfect to understanding that they're not.
Yeah, protection of the public is always one of those things that is high on our list. How about you, Shilo?
So I really think about it from the perspective of improving the work that we do. I've learned so much from Clear, from colleagues, and I think that anytime we're working on something, taking something to our council for approval, I have that experience and that knowledge of what others have done, what's worked and what hasn't worked. And that so much improves the work that we take forward as a regulator, making sure that We're really thoughtful about learning from what others have done. And just that ability to pick up the phone or send an email when you're working on something about, hey, I'm thinking about this thing and I know you guys worked on this. Can we chat? Can you help us out a little bit? And Clear has been so fantastic about helping us build that network and allow us to have the conversations that help us improve our work and what we take forward to our board.
Absolutely. We have that regulatory network that is fantastic that for people to be able to share information on our board. That's fantastic. And Mark?
Yeah, one of the shifts that I've really appreciated seeing has to do with the openness of regulators to regulatory reform. And I'm not saying that all reform is good, but early in my time attending Clear, I remember when we started talking about reform, and because it was happening a lot in my jurisdiction, and there was a very heavy resistance. And something I really appreciated was that pretty quickly, everybody was experiencing the same thing. Everybody was getting asked the questions about why are we doing it the way we're doing it? Why shouldn't we change it? Some of those very, very effective and necessary for the market and for patients and consumers. Some of it not. But I saw a shift with my Clear colleagues that happened over not many years, and it became kind of this shared experience. And so we had a lot of sessions for a few years focused on regulatory reform. And then we didn't stick on it forever. I remember after 2 or 3 annual educational conferences focusing on it, everybody said, let's go on to the new things that we need to talk about. And so I see a willingness, even if resistant at first, like often we as regulators and government officials are, I saw a willingness to change. And then even on the topics that we cover and that we discuss, moving on to the next things. And so I've appreciated that the group is more willing to change thinking and more willing to move on to new ways of thinking than probably most people think that government folks are. In fact, I've come to believe, partly through Clear, partly through my own work in my own agency, that often corporate America and corporate, probably Canada and all of the other jurisdictions we have, are sometimes more resistant to change than what we see at Clear and regulators often. And so that's one of the things I've really appreciated learning is this willingness to change your thinking. And I'll bet that would be surprising to members of the public in each of our jurisdictions. So
I think it would be surprising as well. Well, we know that learning doesn't just happen in the session rooms, right? It's the informal conversations. What makes these in-person meetings so important. The insights maybe from a panel and then the resources that you take home. So looking back, is there a moment or maybe a message from a Clear event that stuck with you? Something that maybe you carried back to your work that has made an impact? And maybe let's stick with Mark on that first one.
Yes, I have had a number of them. I don't know about all of your jurisdictions, but my jurisdiction wants to know what value you're bringing back if we're going to spend X thousands of dollars on traveling and whatever. And so I don't have a really good analysis, but I actually started providing an analysis to my office, a back of the envelope one saying, okay, how many licensees or registrants, as some call, or how many do we have? And if we make this change that I learned at Clear, how much could that save the average consumer or license holder or whatever? And I have an example. I don't remember what year it was. I think it was the second time we were in Denver, but I can't remember for sure. I think it was earlier than that, actually. But we were in a meeting, and one of our policies in Utah was across the board with all of our licenses in my division, if you let your license lapse for 2 years, you had to submit an application as if it was a new application. So it was like nothing counted. And it had always bothered me. But I remember sitting in a Clear session when the moderator or presenter asked for a raise of hands at how many people. So we had just had this great session on reinstatement, right? And renewal and how much you counted. And they asked for a raise of hands, and we were on the more strict side. And I'm from a jurisdiction that likes to be a little bit more open on the market to, regulatory reform and stuff. And I went home from Clear, and the next session we made a massive change where we gave rulemaking authority to all 51 of our licensing boards to consider between 2 years and 5 years, counting their past experience, education, et cetera, et cetera. And that all came out of a Clear session and has probably helped thousands and thousands of people not have to start over. I have a number of examples like that. That's the first one that came to my mind, where my jurisdiction probably spent a couple $1,000s to send me to that conference, and we came back and affected thousands of lives of people that didn't have to go back and get another college degree or retake the exam or whatever. And I've had a number of instances like that where for $2,000 or $3,000 of investment, my jurisdiction and its citizens have reaped a lot of benefit. So I think I have some good examples.
And it's always good when you can kind of have instances where there's a bit of an investment that comes back. Jessica, how about you?
So I don't remember which conference it was at, but so I should say one of the things that I like to do at conferences in order to try to get to meet people who I haven't met before, because it's very easy to kind of hang out with the people that is that anytime we have a meal break, I find a table full of people I don't know and I sit down and I talk to them. And it has been really valuable. And I've met people who I probably wouldn't have otherwise. And you get a chance to really kind of connect. And what do you do? And, you talk about different issues and, oh, okay. So there was one of these meal breaks I sat down, and it was a couple of investigators from, I think it was Indiana. And I don't remember the specific boards, but they were technical boards. And the Division of Enforcement at OPLC was really only created in 2021. So when I came on board, and we were trying to put into place procedures and policies and figure out how to best do investigations and that type of thing. And there was a real emphasis on the medical boards, even though we were an umbrella agency, because that's where most of our complaints came from. But not wanting to forget the technical boards, this gave me a great perspective. How did they handle investigations, and how was that different? Because it was really easy for me, and I think others in the agency, to get stuck on processing medical complaints, so Board of Nursing, Board of Medicine, for example, dental. And there are some nuances there. So it was interesting to get to hear their perspective, and I was able to take back some of the information that they provided me through just looking at it through a different lens, to work those into our policies and procedures and make things better for the Enforcement Division.
And Shilo?
I've had so many what I would call light bulb moments at Clear, where they really impact the way I think about something or change the way that my organization approaches something. And the example that Jessica provided earlier, compassion, is one of those for sure, where I went back to my organization and we really talked about the impact on people of some of our processes and shifted everything. It ended up being part of our next 2 strategic plans, looking at context and people. And really, we've changed everything within our organization to refocus. We've had so many improvements. We've had a reduction in complaints, a huge reduction, like 40% less complaints, because of some of the changes that we've made related to compassion and engaging with people and listening. And so that has been a huge impact on our work. The other one that at the time I really spent a lot of time thinking about was a mid-year session on use of data and really becoming an evidence-informed decision-making body. And that has really changed also, again, how I think about our work and foundationally how we collect information, what we do with it. It doesn't just stay sitting in a database somewhere anymore where nobody ever looks at it. So there's really been fundamental shifts in how we do our work that have come out of conference learnings and attendance that have made a huge difference for our organization.
Great. Well, I think this year's annual education conference sessions dig into some of these emerging trends, evolving expectations, and new ways to define excellence in regulation. From where you sit, like what does regulatory excellence really look like in the real world? And maybe we'll start with Jessica on that one.
So I was thinking about, let's think about this. I don't know if this is really regulatory specific or if this is just real world specific, because everything changes so fast for everyone, probably in every industry. But I think it's having the willingness to learn and continually change and improve. I think maybe there was a time where you could just update all of your policies, procedures, and things and say, we'll review these in 5 years, 10 years. Things don't change that fast. Perhaps there was a time where that was the case. I feel like it was when I was in bar admissions, even though things were changing fairly quickly there too. So statutes and rules aside, maybe because those things take so long to change, I think we have to have a willingness to be open to change and not say, well, we just implemented this, so this must be the way it shall be moving forward. I think it's, approaching things with curiosity, a willingness to learn, and being able to and willing to adapt. So perhaps you did just implement something new, but now you have new information and you should incorporate that as well. So.
Great. Thank you for that, Jessica. Shilo?
I would definitely echo the continuous quality improvement. I think it's about constantly learning, evolving, and trying to do better. And that I heard somebody say at a conference once, if you're not changing and moving forward, you're going backward. So I really believe that. The other components for me are about impact and really demonstrating that the work that we do as a regulator is making a difference for the public, for those we regulate. So really trying to do that, and that's not an easy thing to do. It's really hard. But I think if we're thinking about excellence, I think that's something to aim for. And then the other one, which is always super challenging, is building trust. And with public and with those you regulate, you can absolutely see the difference as an organization in how people respond to you based on how they feel about your organization. And if you work really hard to build that trust, you can start to really see those changes of really simple things like people are nice when they call, and people are willing to engage. Those you regulate will call you to ask questions. They're not afraid. So it's really about building that relationship and paying it a lot of attention to get to a place where everybody trusts that as a regulator, you're doing the right things.
Yeah, I agree that trust is one of those things that is such a very, very important factor in this. And Mark?
Yeah, I think that both Jessica and Shilo have covered pretty much what I wanted to cover. I'll just re-emphasize the concept of trust. We are in a time where institutions, including government, but all other institutions, are losing trust. And so I think that's to be honest, after Shilo said that, I think that's one of the best things that the CLEAR meetings do, because everybody in the room, no matter the session or topic, is thinking about how they're trading in currency of trust in government. And so I think that's an excellent one, is figuring that out. And then I really like what Jessica said about listening and changing, because I think to build off of what Jessica said, there was probably a time when we accepted that government had a monopoly, and we accepted that they were different and that they didn't have to provide good customer service and change. I think those days are long gone, at least in my jurisdiction, but I think that's the same everywhere, where they expect improvement and changes as quickly as they expect them from the business side of the economy. But I'm going to throw in one other thing about regulatory excellence. Something that has been in a lot of our board discussions for the past year, or maybe a little less than a year, and that is, how do you continue to function with excellence when kind of world challenges are happening, and they could be economic, they could be geopolitical, they could be a lot of different things. And I've been kind of sitting back and watching and listening our group on the board talk about this, since we have the benefit of being a organization that's an international organization, and I think that's a strength. And a lot of organizations, I think, not only in the U.S., although it's often there, but even in Canada and other jurisdictions in our footprint, our clear footprint, often are centered and focused on their own country or whatever. And so I've noticed that one of the things about regulatory excellence is an awareness and actions on how you function and are successful when there are things kind of outside of your control. And I think that that's another advantage that Clear can bring, is that it helps you kind of interact and talk through some of those things that we are all experiencing.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Mark. Well, every year at the annual education conference, we hear new challenges that are surfacing, whether it's artificial intelligence, licensing portability, public trust, workforce expectations, just to name a few areas. What challenges feel, I guess, most pressing right now? And how is Clear helping regulatory rise to meet these challenges? Let's start with Shilo.
I think all of the issues that were mentioned are definitely hot topics right now, and things that we as an organization are thinking about. One of those that I'm thoughtful about is related to AI medical devices for veterinary medicine. So in human medicine, those are often regulated by other organizations. In veterinary medicine, that's not true. So something we're thinking about as an organization is there a point where we as a regulator need to be thinking about not only regulating people, but regulating devices where they do things that are protected for the professional. So diagnosis would be an example of that, something we're really thoughtful about, and how that fits with what we do. That certainly would be a change for us, but something we're thinking about. The other big one for me is something my organization is fully immersed in, is regulatory modernization. We're getting new legislation, and that means we have a new act now, but we've been involved in the development of that. And now we're working on regulations and bylaws and standards and policies for the organization as we evolve. So Clear has really been helpful in, again, all of that learning from what others have done, what's a good thing to add into our new regulations or bylaws that others do, what should we not do because that didn't work so well. So we've really learned so much from our colleagues and are really thoughtful about applying that as we move forward in our work.
And Mark?
AI is definitely on the list, but I'm going to give a concept and then one example. I think something that regulators deal with a lot is kind of shifting expectations from lawmakers, from the public. One day they want much more regulation because some bad, highly publicized event has happened, and then the next day we want much less regulation. And I think that happens with every issue. We want you to use AI. We want you to be more efficient. AI is bad. How are you restricting the use of AI? The example I'm going to use is data utilization and data privacy. I think that I would assume this is happening in other jurisdictions, but there's been a big push for government to use its data for good purposes. And so we've had a shift in the last few years toward from like almost a complete lockdown of our data to how do we get this data to the public? And then within the same few years over the last two sessions, a complete reversal as we see what happens with data and social media companies and others. So I think that something that, because everybody feels like they have a claim on the government, and they should, there is often I perceive, I don't know if I'm right, I perceive that there is sometimes more government agencies and officials like we are often subjected more to those shifting societal sentiments and expectations than maybe some private companies are. I don't know, that may not be true, but in my instance, the current one on my mind is data utilization and data privacy, which seem to be conflicting components that we're getting mixed messages on in our jurisdiction. So.
And Jessica, what challenges for you?
All right. I'd say the most pressing challenge I think that I've noticed as of late, and I've seen this in all different contexts, but certainly much more in recent years. And Shilo and Mark already talked about this to some extent, but it's the public trust. So I won't spend a lot of time on it, but since they both did a really great job of covering that. But I think the public trust is something that I have come to realize there's growing pressure, especially in New Hampshire. So there's 400 representatives in New Hampshire and 24 senators. And so everyone knows their representative. And a lot of people, it's a small state, even know the governor. So they're not afraid to reach out. And then the representative is not afraid to reach out, as they should, because they're representing their constituents. But it's a very small community in the state of New Hampshire. So you have to be very aware, like every decision you make, everything that could be public or is public, how is this going to land? Is there something we need to consider? How can we effectively communicate this to the public? Because it really matters, especially in such a small state. So that's something that I have noticed. And in my current position, there's times that I've gotten calls where we only have certain jurisdiction. And we get a lot of calls for people who have complaints that it's outside of our jurisdiction. But the willingness to get on the phone and still talk to them and hear their issue, and to be empathetic and to try to find them the right resource and find who has jurisdiction and help them with that. It goes a really long way to building public trust for our agency, so that if they do have an issue with an entity that's within our jurisdiction, they won't hesitate to reach out to us directly. They won't go to their representative. Hopefully they'll come directly to us. They'll give us a call because we answer the phone, and we're happy to listen to them and to communicate with them. So that is something that I've seen. Like I've said, I've experienced it in all different contexts, from bar admissions to OPLC to my current position. But I think it's even more important, or more prevalent now. And I'm not sure if that's with the rise of social media and everyone's more connected. And if somebody has a bad experience, their whole network knows about it in an instant if they want. So you want to ensure that the public trust is there, because it helps you be more effective at your job. But also it helps you get the information and make those connections that you need to with the public, so that they'll reach out to you if they have a problem. And for the licensees or the entities, you also, if there's something of concern, you want them to reach out to you before it becomes a huge issue, and then you have to reach out to them.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. Well, there is always a sense of momentum at the conference, not just in the sessions, but in what's next for the organization and for the field of professional and occupational regulation. As someone helping guide CLEAR's direction, what are you most hopeful or excited about in how CLEAR is shaping the future of regulatory excellence? Let's start again with Shilo.
I think I want to go back to something Mark said earlier, related to the world is changing around us so much now. And I think that the CLEAR board and the organization has been so thoughtful about how to support all members of CLEAR, regardless of where they're from or what they're involved in at the moment. And I really feel energized by that. I think that we've had so many discussions around the board table about what's going on in the world, and how do we make sure that the offerings of Clear are relevant to everyone. And I've really noticed increased engagement at the committee level. There's lots of new faces, lots of new people on work groups. And so I'm really excited to see that increased involvement. And as an organization, Clears, as I said, thinking about how do we engage with different people at different stages of their career. And so really thinking about the offerings available. Um, I know we're working on Clear 101 series for people that are new to regulation, so that there's so many opportunities for people at different stages of their career and involved in different work to engage with the organization.
Yes, it's fantastic to see these new faces in community or committee involvement. This is fantastic. Yes, thank you. And Jessica?
I think I would primarily echo what Shilo said. I think it's what's exciting and one of the things that I found about Clear is that the organization does a really, in my opinion, a really great job of trying to stay at the forefront of what's important to people, what will be important to people. And so we're not getting presentations on things that are everybody's already had to deal with, and everybody's kind of past. I think the board and the organization are do a really good job, and I think they try to be as responsive as possible to concerns that people are seeing sort of on the horizon, and staying relevant. So that's something that I've always found exciting about being part of Clear, and that I've always appreciated about the organization.
Thank you, Jessica. And Mark?
Yeah, I'm finishing my second term on the board and not running again. And so I wanted to make sure that other people have the opportunity to serve on the board. And that's one of the main reasons that I'm not running. But I want to highlight a specific issue that I think is very encouraging. Having been able to be part of board discussions for 4 years now, I have enjoyed watching our presidents, our president-elect, our current president, and our past president. I'm going to give one example right now. Paul, who's our president-elect, has seen how much AI matters to everybody. It's an interest of his. And every time I see a conference related to technology, he's been invited as a speaker. And in some of our meetings, he's said to us that part of the reason why he does it is he wants Clear to have a seat at the table, and he wants Clear's voice to be part of what's thinking about how regulation happens. And because he's done that, he keeps getting invited to things. Now, I don't know how, the Ireland regulators are and how they feel about him being an international expert on this so that he gets taken everywhere, but they seem to be supporting him because I see him going to a lot of conferences. That gives me as a member a lot of confidence to see someone like the president of Clear say, you know what, this matters to our members, it matters to the world. I'm going to help elevate Clear's role and stance in this area of regulation. So I think having highly engaged people that figure out ways to leverage the resources of Clear in a way that brings meaning to the members is probably kind of, if I had to say a final statement, that would probably be it, is that people are trying to bring their experience, their knowledge, and leverage it in ways, whether it's through a session or through committee membership or running for the board or whatever else, to make a difference. And compared to all the other organizations we belong to, some of which have much more money than Clear has, it's been really fun to kind of watch this kind of member-driven organization. I've also been happy to see us add a few staff, so we've been becoming more able to do things like this and other things, resources that. But I have seen us as a board accept more resources that members have said through surveys or through other things, and then be very careful with the money that we have as an organization to fund staff, to fund programs, whatever it may be. And so I think it's a well-run organization that has enough staff to be effective, but isn't overly burdensome in the number of staff, and has leadership that wants to make it a meaningful organization on the world stage. So that's what I'm excited about for CLEAR, is that I think it has established itself as a great organization in the niche that it has.
Well, Mark, I do want to thank you for your willingness to serve these 2 terms for the board, and we definitely will appreciate your input in the future, and appreciate you being a part of the board. So thank you all for sharing your stories, and I hope our listeners, especially those joining us at the conference, will feel energized to make new connections and maybe even find their own path into deeper involvement with CLEAR. So thank you, Mark, Jessica, and Shilo, for sharing the story of your CLEAR experience with us today.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for having us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely, and it has been a pleasure. As we share this episode with conference attendees, I hope it gives them a sense of the community and leadership that drives CLEAR forward. And I know that all CLEAR board and committee members would welcome conversations with anyone interested in taking the next step in their own CLEAR journey. The invitation to committee participation is open now, and we hope to see a lot of new faces joining us. But don't wait until next year to sign up. If you want to go ahead and join one of those committee meetings during the annual education conference, please just introduce yourself to the chairperson at the meeting and get a feel for what we do. I also want to thank our listeners for tuning in for this episode. We'll be back with another episode of Regulation Matters, a CLEAR conversation, very soon. And if you're new to the CLEAR podcast, please subscribe to us. You can find us on Podbean or any of your favorite podcast services. If you've enjoyed this podcast episode, please leave a rating or comment in the app. Your reviews help us to improve our ranking and make it easier for new listeners to find us. Feel free to visit our website at www.clearhq.org for additional resources and a calendar of upcoming programs and events. Finally, I'd like to thank our CLEAR staff, specifically Stephanie Thompson. She is the content coordinator and editor for this program. Once again, I'm Line Dempsey, and I hope to be speaking to you again very soon.